The other day, I recorded a video, and the name of the video was Wisdom from the Elders. And I talked about several people, and I talked about us older people teaching the younger generation, the young people, about hearing about the struggle and demand and the system. Well, I've taken the time to put several people together, and this video is called Wisdom from the Elders 2. I'm going to talk about some folk that you rarely ever hear anything about or you ever heard about. And if you are not in your 60s or 70s or older, you don't know about these people. Now, yeah, I've omitted Jesse Jackson and Martin Luther King, because everybody know about them. But I'm going to start off with Angela Davis, a black card-carrying member of the Communist Party of the United States, author, teacher, former Black Panther. She lived the struggle. She went to jail for a courtroom takeover in 1970, where 4 people were killed using guns that belonged to her. She was convicted. She spent a year or so in jail behind that. She was exonerated, but part of the struggle. Next, you got Huey P. Newton, an African American revolutionary, most known for founding the Black Panther Party along with Bobby Seale in the 1960s. The Black Panthers, also known as the Black Panther Party, was a political organization founded in 1966 by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale to challenge police brutality against the African American community. You think that this mess with Black Lives Matter just started? Back in '66, the Panthers did it. Dressed in black berets and black leather jackets, the Black Panthers organized armed citizen patrols of Oakland and other U.S. cities. Really? At its peak in 1968, the Black Panther Party had roughly 2,000 members. The organization later declined as a result of internal tensions, deadly shootouts, and FBI counterintelligence activities aimed at weakening the organization. Black Panther Party origins and history. The Black Panther Party founders Huey Newton and Bobby Seale met in 1961 while students at Marriott College in Oakland, California. They both protested the college's Pioneer Day celebration, which honored the pioneers who came to California in the 1800s, but omitted the role of African Americans in settling the American West. Seale and Newton formed the Negro History Fact Group, which called on the school to offer classes in Black history. They founded the Black Panthers in the wake of the assassination of Black nationalist Malcolm X. And after police in San Francisco shot and killed an unarmed Black teen named Matthew Johnson. Originally dubbed the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, the organization was founded in October 1966. The Black Panthers' early activities primarily involved monitoring police activities in black communities in Oakland and other cities. Hmm. As they instituted a number of social programs and engaged in political activities, their popularity grew. The Black Panthers drew widespread support from urban centers with large minority communities, including Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia. By 1968, the Black Panthers had roughly 2,000 members across the country, as we stated. Newton and Seal drew on Marxist ideology for the party's platform. They outlined the organization's philosophical views and political objectives in a 10-point program. The 10-point program called for an immediate end to police brutality. Did you hear that? Call for an immediate end to police brutality. Employment for African Americans and land, housing, and justice for all. BLM is just coming out with that. Ain't nothing new under the sun. It's been around. The Black Panthers were part of the larger Black Power movement. Now, see, y'all don't know nothing about that, young people. Ain't never heard of Black Power before. You raise your fist in Black Power, which emphasized Black pride, community control, and unification for civil rights. While the Black Panthers were often portrayed as a gang, their leadership saw the organization as a political party whose goal was getting more African Americans elected to political office. They were unsuccessful on this front, but by the early 1970s, FBI counterintelligence efforts, criminal activities, and an internal rift between group members weakened the party as a political force. The Black Panthers did, however, start a number of popular community social programs, including free breakfast programs for school children. Yeah, the Black Panthers did that. And free health clinics in 13 African American communities across the United States. They did that too. Talking about the Black Panthers, you all. Then you got another brother here, H. Rap Brown. Y'all ain't never heard of him either. Oh yeah. He's an influential. H. Rap Brown, Hubert Gerald Brown, was born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I know it's called Louisiana. I said Louisiana, 1960. At the age of 17, he moved to Washington, D.C. and joined the Nonviolent Action Group, NAG. In 1964, Brown became chairman of NAG, which eventually led him to join the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. May 27th, 2020. This was last year, this was published. Brown was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and educated in a Catholic orphanage where he clashed with his teachers, as did his older brother, Edward. He became known as H. Rap Brown during the early 60s. His activism in the civil rights movement included involvement with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which he was named chairman in 1967. The same year, he was arrested in Cambridge, Maryland, and charged with inciting to riot after he gave a speech there. Brown was introduced into SNCC by his older brother Ed Rapp. By his brother Ed. Rapp first visited Cambridge with Cleveland Sellers in the summer of '63 during the period of Gloria Richardson's leadership in the local movement. He witnessed the first riot between blacks and whites in the city and was impressed by the local civil rights movement willingness to use armed self-defense against racial attacks. We give up too easy. We don't know how to say no. We bow our head and shuffle our feet and tolerate, and uh-uh. These folks didn't do that. They didn't accept and didn't tolerate. He later organized for SNCC during Mississippi Freedom Summer while transferring his studies to Howard University, Washington, D.C., representing Howard's SNCC chapter. Brown attended a sensuous civil rights meeting at the White House with President Lyndon Johnson during the Selma crisis, 1965. In 1966, he organized for Black voters registration and enforcement of the recently passed Voting Rights Act in Greene County, Alabama. Elected SNCC chairman in '67, Brown continued Stokely Carmichael fiery support for Black power and urban rebellion in the ghettos. All these brothers come along during the struggle. This is what the struggle. They lived it. They fought for it. They endured it. They caught hell, went to jail. Young people don't know nothing about it because schools ain't teaching it, because most people that are in school are as young as students and they don't know from nothing. If it's not up to us old folks and we pass this stuff on, these kids don't know who Malcolm X is. They heard of him. Never attended the speech, never seen the man, don't know nothing about it. Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little, May 19th, 1925. February 21st, 1965, he was an American, he was an African American, Muslim, minister, and human rights activist who was popular. He died he died February 21st, 1965 at age 39 in New York. But let me tell you a little something about Malcolm. Malcolm was born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska. His mother was the National Recording Secretary for the Marcus Garvey movement, which commanded millions of followers in the 20s and 30s. His father was a Baptist minister and chapter president of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who appealed to President Hoover that Marcus Garvey was wrongly arrested. Earl's civil rights activism prompted death threats from the white supremacist organization Black Legion, forcing the family to relocate twice before Malcolm's fourth birthday. Regardless of the Littles' effort to elude the Legion in 1929, their Lansing, Michigan home was burned to the ground. 2 years later, Earl's body was found lying across the trolley tracks. Police ruled both incidents as accidents, but the Littles were certain that members of the Black Legion were responsible. Louise suffered emotional breakdown several years after the death of her husband and was committed to mental institution. Her children were split up amongst various foster homes and orphanages. Eventually, Malcolm and his buddy Malcolm Shorty Jarvis moved back to Boston. In 1946, they were arrested and convicted on burglary charges, and Malcolm was sentenced to 10 years in prison. If you've ever seen that story, you know this. He was paroled after serving 7 years. Recalling his days in school, he used the time to further his education. It was during the period of self-enlightenment that Malcolm's brother Reginald would visit and discuss his recent conversion to the Muslim religion. Reginald belonged to the religious organization, the Nation of Islam. Intrigued, Malcolm began to study the teachings of Elijah Muhammad. Muhammad taught white society white society activities work to keep African Americans from empowering themselves and achieving political, economic, and social success. Hmm? Among others, or among other goals, NOI fought for a state of their own, separate from one inhabited by white people. By the time he was paroled in 1952, Malcolm was a devout follower with a new surname X. He considered Little a slave name and chose the X to signify his lost tribal name. Intelligent and articulate, Malcolm was appointed as a minister and national spokesman for the Nation of Islam. Elijah Muhammad also charged him with establishing new mosques in cities such as Detroit, Michigan, and Harlem, New York. Malcolm utilized newspaper columns as well as radio and television to communicate the Nation of Islam's message across the United States. His charisma or his charismatic drive and conviction attracted an astounding number of new members. Malcolm was largely credited with increasing membership of the Nation of Islam from 500 in 1952 to 30,000 in 1963. One man. The crowds and controversy surrounding Malcolm made him a media magnet. He was featured in a week-long television special with Mike Wallace, 1959, called The Hate That Hate Produced. The program explored the fundamentals of the Nation of Islam and attacked Malcolm's emergence as one of its most important leaders. After the special, Malcolm was faced with the uncomfortable reality that his fame had eclipsed that of his mentor, Elijah Muhammad. Racial tensions ran increasingly high during the early 60s. In addition to the media, Malcolm's vivid personality had captured the government's attention as membership in the Nation of Islam continued to grow. FBI agents infiltrated the organization. One even acted as Malcolm's bodyguard and secretly placed bugs, wiretaps, cameras, and other surveillance equipment to monitor the group's activities. Hmm. Talk about the struggle, huh? Talk about being subversive, huh? Talk about the government being being corrupt, huh? This this is what they do. This is what they did under Hoover. Ain't got no better. Malcolm's face was dealt a crushing blow at the height of the civil rights November as the civil rights movement in 1963. He learned that his mentor and leader, Elijah Muhammad, was secretly having relations with as many as 6 women within the Nation of Islam's organization. As if that were not enough, Malcolm found out that some of these relationships have resulted in children. Yes, it did. Since joining the Nation of Islam, Malcolm had strictly adhered to the teachings of Muhammad, which included remaining celibate until his marriage to Betty Shabazz in 1958. Malcolm refused Muhammad's request to help cover up the affairs and subsequent children. He was deeply hurt by the deception of Muhammad, who he had considered a living prophet. Malcolm also felt guilty about the masses he had led to join the Nation of Islam, which he now felt was a fraudulent organization built on too many lies to ignore. These are people who went through the struggle, lived it, that we need to talk about, that colleges don't talk about, that universities won't allow, that school children never heard of, that teachers that are just about that are a little older than the students have no clue. And we as old people sitting back just forgetting all about it. But oh, those of us that were out there, there were those of us who went to the rallies, who watched on TV, who listened on the radio, read in the newspaper, day after day after day, and saw what was going on and was hurt to our heart. We may not have been out there marching and picketing and boycotting, but we were supporting in other ways. Shortly after his shocking discovery, Malcolm received criticism for a comment he made regarding the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Kennedy never foresaw that the chickens would come home to roost so soon, said Malcolm. After the statement, Elijah Muhammad silenced Malcolm X for 90 days. Malcolm, however, suspected he was silenced for another reason. In March 1964, Malcolm terminated his relationship with the Nation of Islam. Unable to look past Muhammad's deception, Malcolm decided to found his own religious organization, the Muslim Mosque, Inc. That same year, Malcolm went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia. The trip proved life altering. For the first time, Malcolm shared his thoughts and beliefs with different cultures and found the response to be overwhelmingly positive. When he returned, Malcolm said he had met blonde haired, blue eyed men I could call my brothers. They were called devils before until they went to Mecca. He returned to the United States with a new outlook on integration and a new hope for the future. This time, when Malcolm spoke, instead of just preaching to African Americans, he had a message for all races. Give you another one. Dick Gregory, Richard Claxton Gregory, born August 12, 1932, was an American comedian, civil rights and vegetarian activist. Gregory was at the forefront of political activism in the 1960s when he protested the Vietnam War and racial injustice. He was arrested multiple times and went on many hunger strikes. That's right, he did in jail. Gregory opened the door for Bill Cosby to rise to fame, Littleton said. Now, this is Littleton is one of the gentlemen who wrote an autobiography. So he was talking to Gregory, and this is what Gregory told him. He was noted for his political and social activism. Beginning in the civil rights movement in the 1960s, he attended the historic 1963 March on Washington. 40 years later, Gregory told Travis Smiley on NPR about his experience at the march, describing it as joy. It was festivity, and as far as the human eye could see. Gregory talked in 2003 about his experience trying to integrate a restaurant in Mississippi before the march, showing that he could inject some humor into a serious story. Well, we tried to integrate restaurant, he says. They told him, they said, we don't serve colored folk here. And I said, well, I don't eat colored folk nowhere. Bring me some pork chops. And the Ku Klux Klan came in. And the woman say, we don't have no pork chops. So I say, that's this Gregory, well, bring me a whole fried chicken. And then the Klan walked up to me, and when they put the whole fried chicken in front of me, one of the Klansmen said, whatever you do to that chicken, boy, we're going to do the same thing to you. So Gregory said, okay. So I opened up its legs and kissed it on the rump and tell you all, be my guest. Smart. He was direct in his language about race. He co-wrote with Robert Lipstick the book Nigger, an autobiography. The N is lowercase. 1964, Gregory explained to NPR why he chose the title. Listen up for this. So this word nigger was one of the most well-used words in America, but particularly among Black folk. We know that. And I said, well, let's pull it out the closet. Let's lay it out here. Let's deal with it. Let's dissect it. Yeah, let's look at this here. Now, the problem I have today with people calling it the N word, it should never be called the N word. You see, how do you talk about a swastika by using another term? Swastika is a swastika, not a S. It's not an S, it's a swastika. In March 2011 profile of American comedian Dick Gregory written for GQ magazine, journalist Robert Chalmers mused, it's fortunate that his life has been played out so publicly because Dick Gregory is a character it would be impossible to render credibly in fiction. It is an apt in description as any for Gregory, a skinny boy born into a poor Black family in St. Louis, Missouri, who became a standout college student, Army veteran, comedian, social commentator, civil rights campaigner, committed humanist, longtime vegan activist. conspiracy theorist, health food entrepreneur, and a one-time candidate for the presidency of the United States. That's right, Gregory. Gregory's entry into the 1968 presidential campaign was threatened, was treated as little more than an entertaining sideshow. Get those a joke by political commentators and mainstream media outlets. However, the comedian also garnered an enthusiastic following among college students and working class African Americans. And his highly public criticism of the two-party system piqued the interest of the FBI. I ain't surprised. Gregory's flair for the dramatic bellied belied a well-reasoned and unshamelessly radical critique of the U.S. political system, systematic white racism, the excuses of American capitalism, and the war in Vietnam. As an important early case study in Black celebrity activism, Gregory's presidential run can help shed light on how both celebrity and Blackness are defined and consumed in our society, and particularly historical activism and the new left, which emerged during the 1960s. In 1968, Gregory ran for president, as I said, as a write-in candidate and got 47,090 votes, 47,097 votes as a Black man running on a third party write-in candidate. You think these people didn't go through something? You got the names. Do your due diligence. Do your homework. Old folks, put these young people to work. Give them something to think about rather than video games. Those that are in middle school, put their minds at work. Let them find out who Joan of Salk was. Let them find out about Angela Davis. Let them find out about Martin Luther King and Morehouse College. Let them find out about the Tuskegee Airmen, Tuskegee Institute. Ask them about, or teach them about the Devil's Punch Bowl. You want to do something? Oh, all this is down there. Devil's Punch Bowl down in Mississippi. It's grown over. Read about it. Study upon it. Teach them. You can't do nothing about it, but you can sure know about it. Wisdom from the elders. 2,